Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's 6 o'clock, and we're going to convene the City Council meeting for January the 19th. We're here at City Hall at 6 p.m. Would you join me, please, or first of all, roll call, please? Or call order, I'm sorry. Pledge of Allegiance, Mr. Morris, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for its one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, I have a statement I'm going to read first, so get that out of the way, please. This is the pandemic advisory. Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, this meeting is being held both in person and virtually. As a courtesy to all in attendance, should this meeting run past 8 o'clock and beyond, a short recess will be called at that time. For the public record for all speakers, please speak clearly and directly into the microphone in order for your voice to be recorded and heard by the virtual attendees. For virtual attendees who wish to participate during this meeting, during the pandemic or during the public participation portions of this meeting, click the hand icon on the upper right-hand corner of your screen and unmute your microphone. When it is your turn, staff will unmute you and advise you that you are live and to speak. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Please state your name, your residence, and use of proper decorum, please. The council may choose to respond to your comment or move on to the next commentator until all have been heard. Staff will only be monitoring the raise hand function. Question functions will not be monitored. Okay, we're going to move into our roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown?
Here.
Mayor Hogue?
Here.
Councilmember Kellum?
Here.
Councilmember Morrison?
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Lehman?
Here.
Okay, our first item is public participation. I have no cards, and I know somebody wants to speak. Okay, we'll move on to public participation and presentation and interviews. We do have a presentation by Stephen Longmire. You come to the microphone, please. State your name and your residence, and you got 3 minutes, sir.
Okay. Hi, my name is Stephen Longmire. I'm a resident of Cape Canaveral, and I'm presenting to you on behalf of a potential forest park in Cape Canaveral. Today, I just want to show you how this park could be a great perfect project for the city's goals, our citizens, and our wildlife. So there should be a presentation. Okay, yeah, that's good. So also there's been a petition behind this, and there's about 760 people that have signed this time. So I'm speaking on behalf of them as well, and they are all supposedly residents of the area. So I'll move on to the next slide. So about the property, you can see in the photo at the top right that there's a pretty good chunk of land there, and the blue arrow that goes up and out the top of the photo is what's known as the central ditch. So the property is 10 acres of live oaks, cabbage palms, and other native plants and critters. One of the only undeveloped forest tracts from Port Canaveral to Sebastian Inlet of this size, actually. So it's a pretty significant area. The central ditch itself is bordered by mangroves, and it is honestly a pretty beautiful site for having the name of Central Ditch. It's already a popular spot for a lot of people to go and hang out with turtles, fish, feed them, and interact. So this would only be making that even better. Next slide. So why this space should be a park? It already benefits our lagoon by managing 14,383,000 gallons of water per year. And that's just the way it collects it. It holds it as a natural soil, and the plants then use that. So that would be beneficial for the lagoon by mitigating rainwater runoff and stormwater. Also, one of the most important issues facing future Brevard County is having ample shared recreation and conservation areas, and that's according to a county meeting in October of 2020. And our current space is still a crucial but separate niche. You can see Manatee Cove Park there and its amount of tree coverage compared to the photo up at the top right with the amount of tree coverage at the property that I'm referring to. Another reason is that this would be a great cool and shady place for activity and relaxation in our hot summers. A lot of the beaches and stuff can be really hot for a lot of our elderly folks, and this area would be significantly cooler and very peaceful. It also supports biodiversity in a time when we're running out of natural spaces. Also, people exposed to areas with over 30% tree coverage actually show 30% better mental health and physical health in the long run afterwards. So it would be grateful or great for our citizens' health. And then the next slide. Why the space already meets our goals as is, we're not even being acquired. So according to the screenshot from the city's website, we have according to the Comprehensive Conservation and Management Plan on the city website, there's 6 categories here: stormwater, wastewater treatment facility, muck removal, habitat restoration, and citizen engagement and monitoring and research. So this would actually include 3 out of those 6 goals. So it's a blanket project. We just finished the city park exfiltration project, and that manages water from 30 acres around that city park. With this additional investment, we would be adding potentially between 8 and 10 acres, depending on a couple properties that I just found out about that exist adjacent to it. That would add 33% more stormwater management without having to do any more capital projects. It's also an opportunity for habitat restoration, just as it is. There's a lot of invasives there and such, but with community engagement programs and organizations, we could have people there in the long term. It doesn't have to be an immediate program that's, I don't know, like immediately jumped on. Like this could be a long-term process for citizens to be able to come out or get familiar with the landscape and actually make this space really cool. It's also a great opportunity, like I said, for students. The elementary schools right there, they could go there for field trips. You could have students from the high school come and get Bright Futures hours volunteering at the space, doing the restoration. Animals that benefit us already live there. And also we have some pretty cool native plants that live there as well. Moving on, I mostly wanted to just, it's a big, next slide, please. Yes. So it's a pretty big initial bill at $5.9 million. But I mean, when you consider what it's doing for us in the long run, it's not really that crazy. And with the help of the Florida Communities Trust grant, that would actually pay for 75% of that $5.9 million. So that is a huge bill completely taken care of, provided that we apply for that. And the reason I'm here is because the city is the person that has to apply for that. I can't do that myself. The application period is from October 1st through December 15th, and this provides enough time for city employees and such to kind of hash it all out, apply, get the engineering reports filled and things like that, just to see if we get it. But even if we don't get that grant, this is still an incredible potential opportunity for our entire area. There's almost no more areas left like this in Brevard County. And what we do have is not forested like this. You have to drive at least 20 to 30 minutes to find anything like this. So moving on to the next slide. In conclusion, not only would this be great for our lagoon, wildlife, and community for decades to come, it's also a really, really awesome example of tropical forest that is incredibly rare. And we can preserve this last bit of land as a reminder of how special our home is and to help us grow smarter and healthier into the future in a better educated way. These photos here are actually from within the park itself. We have permission to go in and check it out a little bit. It's already gorgeous and there's not even trails. So it is really neat. And then there's another slide with more photos behind this as well. Just showing how big this is. Next slide, please. There. So just a couple more photos included in here showing how cool the canopy is. And I mean, it's a really, really gorgeous space. So, and these are the turtles that people frequently interact with. So people want to be interacting with nature. It's just kind of hard to have opportunities to do that when we have beach, lagoon, or big open park with minimal natural resources. So thank you, and I hope we're able to move forward with this. I'd love to meet and
Staff has it.
Okay.
They have it. We're working. Okay, sir. Thank you. Anybody else want to speak before we move on? Because I'll give you the opportunity again. And I have no cards up here, so. For agenda items, nobody wants to say anything. Sure, sure.
I would just like to say congratulations for a wonderful presentation. It was very professional, and I enjoyed it very much. Thank you.
Yep. Mr. Mayor, I wanted to do the same as Mayor Pro Tem. I know the amount of effort that went into that, and I went to the Change website. Citizen-led efforts like this is, no matter where it goes, it's a victory. So one person can make a difference. You've brought it to our attention, and compliment you echoing our Mayor Pro Tem. Beautiful presentation effort that put into it, and hope you stay involved with the city. Thank you.
Mayor, if I could, just want to record that we do have council consensus for staff to look into this grant program. Thank you.
Okay, consent items. Anybody have anything they want to remove? We have 4 items. Everybody happy with the consent? Okay. Motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we accept consent items 1 through 4.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Consent items 1 through 4. Call the roll.
Councilmember Brown?
4.
Mayor Hoke?
4.
Councilmember Kellum? 4. Councilmember Morrison?
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond?
4.
Public hearings. Where's Anthony? I thought I saw him. Oh, okay. I'm looking down there. I'm sorry. Okay.
Yeah, I'm over here.
I saw you come in. I thought, where'd you go? Ordinance number 1, 2021. First reading. Mr. Garganese.
Okay. Before I read ordinance 01-2021, I think it'd be helpful just to bring this airplane up to about 50,000 feet. As you know, the City Council adopted a couple of new ordinances regarding creation of a conservation zoning district as well as a public recreation zoning district. That kind of laid the groundwork for staff to finish up administrative rezonings for government-owned property within the city of Cape Canaveral. And this is really phase 1 of an administrative rezoning process that ultimately will deal with phase 2 and private property owners as well, that attempts to take the existing land uses in the city of Cape Canaveral and put consistent future land use map designations and consistent zoning designations on all of the parcels. Tonight is just phase 1. It involves just the local government parcels that are owned in the city of Cape Canaveral, including the city of Cape Canaveral's own property. To facilitate the discussion tonight, Brenda prepared a really nice exhibit that we passed out to you before the meeting. That exhibit identifies all of the government properties that are affected by the 8 zoning or comprehensive plan ordinances this evening. And the numbers on the exhibit 1 through 8 correspond with the ordinance numbers that I'm going to read into the record, starting with ordinance 01-2021. So you have a little cheat sheet. You can follow the bouncing ball, but the 8 ordinances we'll go through. We'll do them one at a time. We'll ask council to vote on them one at a time. And in general, the ordinances either change the zoning designation on one or more of the parcels, or change the future land use map designation on one or more of the parcels, or actually changes the zoning, the future land use map and the zoning designation on a couple of the parcels. Again, the objective, existing land uses for these parcels will have consistent future land use map designations and zoning designations at the end of the day. So I'm going to start with ordinance 01-2021. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a city-initiated rezoning of several government-owned properties owned respectively either by the City of Cape Canaveral or the Canaveral Port Authority related to lands with current future land use map classification of conservation and currently being used by said government entities as conservation and public or recreation uses within the jurisdictional limits of the city of Cape Canaveral, specifically changing the zoning map designation of the properties generally referred to as the Banana River Park, the northern portion of Manatee Sanctuary Park, and a portion of Cape Canaveral Port Authority property located within the northwest portion of the city along the Banana River, from their respective current city zoning designations to the city conservation zoning district designation, providing the properties subject to this ordinance are more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A, attached here too, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading and a public hearing item. Mayor.
Thank you. Council, we're all pretty well aware of what this is all about. So I don't know if you have anything you want to discuss on it, or we can go out to the public if you don't have anything.
Oh, no, I'm good.
Okay, we'll take it out to public hearing. This is an ordinance change where we're bringing all the city-owned and public-owned properties, like the Port Authority has a sliver of land up on the north end, bringing all these into the ordinance to be zoned within the proper districts that we're changing those to. Some of them are privately owned and some are publicly owned. Anybody have any question on this item? That's why you can come to the microphone, please. No, they are, but just tell us who you are.
Stephen Longmire, resident. These are being zoned as potentially conservation. A couple of these properties I read in that agenda.
It's public park and conservation.
Okay. So does that mean that they would potentially be for development or things like that, or only for public use?
Only public use.
Okay,
That's
thank you.
basically what it is.
Thank you.
Anybody else have anything? I should let Anthony answer those questions, so I stumble. Would anybody have
Right?
something on this one? Okay, we'll close out and go to the.
Mayor, we need to go to Daniel. See if-
Sorry?
We need to go to Daniel.
Oh, yeah, I forgot, that's virtual. Daniel?
Yes, sir, we have one hand raised at this time, Nate Schwartz.
Okay,
Nate, I have unmuted you. If you want to unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
I was just learning the app right now. I'm not ready to speak at this time. So just discard me at this time. This isn't the subject I want to speak on. Thank you.
is that what we want, Daniel?
No other hands raised at this time, sir, no.
Okay, we'll come out of public and back to the dais. Anybody have any comments? If not, we'll look for a motion.
Just, I got one clarity comment on these parcels here. Are any of these, I think all these are public homes in this batch, right? Or
Yes.
are any of these private? All public?
All
Okay.
public owned property.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. And we close out and with a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance number 012021.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Ms. Kellum and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Reaman. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown?
4.
Mayor Hogue?
4.
Councilmember Kellum? 4. Councilmember Morrison?
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond?
4.
Item number 6 is ordinance number 02221.
Right.
Mr. Garganese, first reading.
You can follow the bouncing ball on the map. Ordinance 02-2021. These are all the properties labeled number 2 on the map. An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a city-initiated rezoning of several government-owned properties, respectively, either by the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, or the Brevard County School District, related to lands with current future land use map classification of public recreation and currently being used by said government entities as either public or recreation uses within the jurisdictional limits of the city of Cape Canaveral, specifically changing the zoning map designation of the properties generally referred to as the old City Hall complex and Sheriff's Office, City Recreation Center, City Library, Wastewater Reclamation Facility, Cape View Elementary, Cherry Down Park, Canaveral City Park, southern portion of Manatee Sanctuary Park, and city-owned property located at 200 Long Point Road, Patriots Park, from their respective current city zoning designations to the city public recreation zoning district designation, providing for the property subject to this ordinance are more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A, attached here too, providing for the repeal of prior and consistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance, also a public hearing item. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Council? Basically the same thing. We're talking about city-owned buildings and some park, library, sheriff's office. That pretty well covered that one. Anybody have any questions? No, we'll go to public hearing. Have the opportunity. Same thing. This is all the city buildings, the wastewater treatment, sheriff's office, and part of Manatee Park. We'll go to virtual hearing. Anybody, Daniel?
No, sir, no hands raised at this time.
Audience, one more opportunity. We'll bring it back up here otherwise. Okay, back to the dais.
Mr. Mayor, just same question. Are all of these are public land too as well, Anthony?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Land and buildings and so forth. Okay. Motion to move it forward.
Okay, Mayor, I'd like to move that we approve ordinance number 02-2021.
I'll second.
Okay, there's a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Raymond and a second by Councilmember Kellum. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown?
Four.
Mayor Hogue?
Four.
Councilmember Kellum?
For.
Councilmember Morrison?
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond?
4.
Item number 7, ordinance number 03-2021, first reading. Mr. Garganese.
Ordinance number 03-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a small-scale future land use map amendment by changing the future land use map designation of approximately 8.64 acres of real property owned by the Canaveral Port Authority, currently being used and commonly known as the southern portion of Jetty Park, and more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A attached here too, from R3 residential to public recreation, providing for the repeal of prior and consistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, incorporation into the comprehensive plan, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance, also a public hearing item. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Also, this area is the southern part of the Jetty Park area, tent camping area that we've had for many years. 3 acres or whatever it was. But
And Mr. Mayor,
same thing.
quick question. On the map and compliments on the map, thank you so much. Very well done and makes this go smooth. This is number 3 and 4, up in the top right, the northeastern
Mhm.
corner. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay. And this one is private land used by the port, zoned as R3,
And it's property owned by the port and used as,
previously owned by the county.
yeah, the county owned it and conveyed it to Port Canaveral, I believe. They currently own it. It's that's where the bike trail and trees and all that are located, southern part of Jetty Park.
Got it. And I think, Todd, the port probably wants this, I'm assuming. Did they provide any feedback?
Yeah, Brenda, can you describe the process of notification and comment, how that works?
Sure. We noticed each property owner individually. We did an ad in the paper as we're required to do by state, and we had no comments from them. This property is owned by the port, as we said, and I spoke to an individual, but it never went beyond sending them the ordinances for the review.
Thank you. No more questions, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Council, any more? Public, we'll go to public hearing. Anybody have anything they want to talk on this one? Okay. Daniel, do you have anybody out there?
No, sir, no hands raised at this time.
Okay. One more time, public. Come back to the council discussion or a motion.
Make a motion that we accept ordinance number 3, 2021 as written.
I'll second it.
We have a motion by Councilmember Brown and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Raymond. Ordinance 03, 2021. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue,
4.
Councilmember Kellum,
4.
Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond.
4.
Okay, item number 8, ordinance 04, 2021. First reading, Mr. Garganese.
All right, this ordinance involves the same property owned by the port. It's the companion rezoning ordinance. This ordinance would make the zoning designation consistent with the future land use map change that you passed on first reading. Ordinance 04-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a city-initiated rezoning of approximately 8.64 acres of real property owned by the Canaveral Port Authority, currently being used and commonly known as the southern portion of Jetty Park, from the current city zoning designation to the city public recreation zoning district designation, providing the property subject to this ordinance is more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A attached here too, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, and a conditional effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance, also a public hearing item. And the conditional effective date is basically this ordinance would go into effect if adopted once ordinance 03-2021 becomes effective by law. Mayor.
Thank you. Council? Comments? Very happy. Okay, we'll go to public hearing. Again, public. No comment from public. Mr. Daniel, do you have anybody out there?
No, sir, no hands raised at this time.
Okay. Public, one more time. Back to the dais. Close public hearing. Council? I'll make a motion to accept 04-2021 as written.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second by myself and motion by myself and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Raymond for ordinance 04-2021. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue,
4.
Councilmember Kellum,
4.
Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond.
4.
All right, we'll go to item number 9. Ordinance number 05-2021. Again, first reading.
We're going to head to
Or Mr.
the western side of the city along the Banana River. Ordinance number 05-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a small-scale future land use map amendment by changing the future land use map designation of property owned by the City of Cape Canaveral and generally known as Long Point Park, approximately 7.8888 acres, and more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A attached here too, from a split of R1 residential and conservation to entirely conservation, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, incorporation into the comprehensive plan, and an effective date. This is first reading and a public hearing item. If you recall, this is the property that is subject to, partially subject to conservation easement with St. John's River Water Management District. Mayor.
Thank you. Okay, this is, like Mr. Garganese says, this is a conservation easement at the end of Long Point Road. And we are looking for council's comments. We've discussed this quite a few times, but this here tonight is for passage, so. Need a motion, if you want, or discussion. Council, we'll close council, we'll go to the public hearing. If anybody wants to speak, please just raise your hand and talk about it if you want. We've been working on this for quite a long time, so it's come to reality, so. Nobody wants to speak? Daniel?
No, sir, no hands at this time.
Okay. We'll close the public hearing, come back to the council again. Need a motion to accept this one.
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance number 062021.
05? Correct,
Oh,
05.
sorry, 05.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Kellum and a second by Mayor Pro Tem Raymond to accept ordinance number 05-2021 at the first reading. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue,
4.
Councilmember Kellum,
4.
Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond.
4.
Item number 10 is ordinance number 06-2021, first reading. Mr. Garganese.
Okay, this is the same piece of property. This is the companion rezoning ordinance. Ordinance number 06-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a city-initiated rezoning of approximately 7.88 acres of real property owned by the City of Cape Canaveral, currently being used as conservation and commonly known as Long Point Park, from the current city zoning designation to the city R1 residential 2 conservation zoning district designation, providing the property subject to this ordinance is more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A, attached here too, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, and a conditional effective date. This is a first reading of this ordinance, also a public hearing item, and this ordinance has a similar conditional effective date dependent upon ordinance 05-2021 becoming effective by law. Mayor.
Thank you. All right, council, ordinance number 06-2021. Comments? Comments? Public hearing. Anybody want to comment on this? This is basically follow up on just what we had before, Long Point Park, conservation area. Daniel?
No, sir, no hands raised at this time.
Okay, nobody public? Close public hearing, back to the council. Need a motion to close.
I'd like to make a motion that we accept ordinance number 6-2021 as written.
I'll second.
Motion to pass ordinance 06-2021 by Councilmember Brown and second by Councilmember Morrison. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue,
4.
Councilmember Kellum,
4.
Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond.
4.
Item number 11 is ordinance number 07-2021, first reading. Mr. Garganese.
All right, this ordinance hit home this evening. Ordinance number 07-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a small-scale future land use map amendment by changing the future land use map designation of several properties owned by the City of Cape Canaveral and generally known as the City Hall Complex, 4 parcels totaling approximately 1.16 acres. City Fire Station, approximately 0.58 acres, 300 Washington Avenue, Bennix Park, approximately 0.61 acres, and 8820 North Atlantic Avenue, Wagner Park, approximately 0.22 acres, more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A attached here 2, from C1 commercial or R2 residential to public recreation, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, incorporation into the comprehensive plan, and an effective date. This is first reading, also a public hearing item. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Okay, council, this is well, what, 5 pieces of property, I think, was, and changing from R2 and commercial back to recreation. We've had it before, talked about it. First reading here.
Yep, Mr. Mayor, got a comment on the, look at the map. If I got this right. This includes the property right behind, well, I guess east of us here. The small parcel that we're currently not using, is that in this batch? Here, was I think Dave and the building department was working out of that building.
City Hall complex, 4 parcels.
Councilmember Morrison, that block in green, perhaps we can zoom into where City Hall is. I think this could answer your question.
Yeah, just east to
Okay,
that.
so that's showing 4 parcels there. Of the bottom 2, the one in green at the east is, I believe, that lot you're referring to. That's where the building department used to be, and the building was torn down on that green shaded area.
Okay, got it. And I guess my question is does the city intend to use that property in the future? If not, should we consider holding off on rezoning that one?
Well, we are using it as parking lot here in this part of this facility.
Okay, then I think we're, okay. Got it. Maybe I'm mixing up. I'm a little bit further, getting tangled up, but I'm clear. Makes sense to me. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anybody else have a? Public? Go to public hearing. Daniel?
No, sir, no hands raised at this time.
Okay. Back. Close public hearing and come back to council. Ordinance number 07, 2021.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 07, 2021.
I'll second it.
Yeah, we have a motion by Councilmember Morrison, a second by Mayor Pro Tem Raymond to adopt ordinance 07, 2021. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue,
4.
Councilmember Kellum,
4.
Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond.
Item number 12 is ordinance number 08, 2021. First reading, Mr. Garganese.
Okay. This is the same group of properties. Ordinance number 08-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, adopting a city-initiated rezoning of several government-owned properties owned by the City of Cape Canaveral and currently being used as either public or recreation uses within the jurisdictional limits of the City of Cape Canaveral, specifically changing the zoning map designation of the properties generally referred to as City Hall Complex, City Fire Station, and city properties located at 300 Washington Avenue, Bennix Park, and 8820 North Atlantic Avenue, Wagner Park, from their respective current city zoning designations to the city public recreation zoning district designation, providing for properties subject to this ordinance are more particularly depicted and legally described on Exhibit A, attached here 2, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, severability, and a conditional effective date. Similar conditional effective date. It will be, this ordinance will go in effect dependent upon ordinance 07, 2021 becoming effective by law. This is again first reading and public hearing item. Mayor.
Thank you. Council? This is just enacting ordinance at 08/2021. Need a motion?
Public comment.
Public comment, I'm sorry. Say it. Public? Again, it's quiet. Mr. Daniel, out there, you got something out there?
No, sir, no hands at this time.
Okay. Public, I'll give you another shot at it. Close public hearing, come back to the council.
Mr. Mayor, I move that we adopt ordinance number 08/2021.
Have a motion by Mr. Morrison and a second by Councilmember Brown to accept ordinance 08/2021. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown,
4.
Mayor Hogue,
4.
Councilmember Kellum,
4.
Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond.
4.
Item number 13. This ordinance number 09/2021. First reading. Mr. Garganese.
Right. Ordinance number 09-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Florida, amending Chapter 78, Article 2, Sanitary Sewer System, related to the administrative enforcement of the provisions stated therein, providing for the clarification of applicable penalties, providing for the use of special magistrate for administrative proceedings involving violations by industrial and commercial users of the city sewer system, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code severability and an effective date. This is first reading of this particular ordinance. This ordinance actually makes a few house cleaning proposed amendments. This ordinance has to do with the city sewer system and commercial and industrial users. There's a provision in the existing city code relative to obtaining permits for that type of sewer facility, and there's an administrative enforcement procedure that's tailored specifically for this type of situation. That kind of mirrors a little bit the Florida Department of Environmental Protection's process relative to consent orders. In reviewing the code, realized that the special magistrate was not added for this particular violation. So one of the changes would be to incorporate the special magistrate into the administrative proceeding if there ever is an administrative proceeding. And then there was a little wordsmithing relative to consent orders and how to deal with violations at the city manager level. And we're proposing some clarifying language to 78-59A and B to address the issues that we saw when we were looking at this code. Be happy to answer any specific questions you may have.
I have a question.
Yes.
Anthony, you mentioned the permit. Could you just briefly outline the permitting procedure?
Sure. I can very briefly off the top of my head. There are some commercial and industrial users that are, I would call maybe kind of extraordinary, not your run of the mill. There's a process under the code where those commercial and industrial users have to obtain permission to discharge their waste with it to the city sewer system. Sewer system is kind of like an organic being out there. There's certain ways that it has to treat all of the discharge from various businesses. Not all businesses are equal with their discharge. The important thing is to keep the plant running healthy and functioning, with especially the biological aspects of the plant, with its bugs and all that breaks down, the bacteria. In addition, the city is subject to FDEP, Florida Department of Environmental Protection permits, and the city has its own discharge requirements. It discharges treated sewer appropriately for reclaimed water, et cetera. So this is the front end aspect of it, where the city gets to evaluate the commercial and industrial users discharged into the plant so the city can meet its obligations of discharge under its permit. So the permitting process is the ability for the city to get a peek under the hood relative to commercial and industrial users. What are you going to be discharging into our lift stations? You know, so we can plan accordingly and treat it. In some cases, you know, there needs to be pre-treatment provided by commercial and industrial users before they discharge into the city's sewer system. The permitting process would give the city the ability to evaluate whether or not that's necessary.
So you're saying that if a new business is coming into the city and then when they apply for their permits, this is also an additional part of the permitting procedure?
It's part of the permitting procedure. When businesses have to come and they want to hook up to the city sewer system, new businesses, this is part of the permitting procedure.
Thank you. Thank you.
Mr. Morrison, got it? Mr. Fellman? Ms. Bell?
No.
It's something that we need. So, public? So, we want to talk, you need to come up to the microphone, please, state your name. And then when you're through, we need a card filled out and give it to the officer, please.
My name's Malcolm. I was just curious about pre-existing businesses. Do we know what they're contributing and putting into the lift stations? Or will that be something that they need to do in the future?
They're all looked at independently. So if there's a particular business you're interested in, I would encourage you to meet with our Public Works Director sitting over here in the blue shirt. He can fill you in on any particulars of an existing business.
All right. Thanks.
Please fill out a card, if you would, or out in the lobby, and give it to the officer. Your name and your last name and name, please. Address. Okay, anybody else want to comment? What we're... Daniel?
Yes, sir. Nate Schwartz has a hand raised at this time. Nate, I have unmuted you. You have 3 minutes. Mr. Nate Schwartz, if you would like to unmute yourself, you have 3 minutes.
I'm sorry, I must have bumped my phone. I'm not ready to speak. I'm just having trouble with my app. I apologize.
All right. No other hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Public? Close public hearing, come back to the dais. No comments, we look for a motion.
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance number 092021 as written.
Second? No second. Here we have a motion by Ms. Councilmember Kellum. Motion or second from myself. Call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown?
4.
Mayor Hogue?
4.
Councilmember Kellum?
4.
Councilmember Morrison?
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond?
4.
Okay, item number 14 is an ordinance 1021. First reading, Mr. Garganese.
This is ordinance number 10-2021, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Cape Canaveral, Brevard County, Florida, amending section 110-486 of the city code, regulating vacation rentals, making findings of fact, providing for definitions, requiring vacation rental registration, requiring inspections, specifying duties of vacation rental owners and allowing agents, providing for maximum occupancy, providing limited exceptions for pre-existing contracts, providing requirements of vacation rental owners and agents related to sexual predators and offenders, requiring provisions for providing and posting safety information for occupants and vacation vacation rentals, providing restrictions related to accessory structures, providing enforcement, providing for other miscellaneous provisions, providing for the repeal of prior inconsistent ordinances and resolutions, incorporation into the code, severability, and an effective date. This is first reading of this ordinance. City Council has been discussing the possibility of imposing future additional regulations on vacation rentals. The City Council also directed that staff evaluate some software programs that are out there relative to maintaining databases and information regarding vacation rentals in local communities. This ordinance is coming to you at your request to suggest the types of additional regulations that can be adopted currently for vacation rentals. As you know, vacation rentals is a very hot topic around the state of Florida. As you know, Florida legislature, every legislative session, it seems, in the last 6 years or so, brings up the topic of vacation rentals. This legislative session is no exception. A bill was filed last week related to vacation rentals and possibly adopting further curbs on municipal home rule authority. Currently, the way the law is, the city is preempted from regulating the duration or frequency of vacation rentals unless, or further, the city is preempted from prohibiting vacation rentals as they're defined in state law, with the exception of those communities that have grandfathered provisions prior to June 1, 2011. City of Cape Canaveral happens to be one of those communities with a grandfathered provision. That grandfathered provision is that vacation rentals are required to have minimum rentals for 7 consecutive days. That is a grandfathered provision, and it's still in effect in Cape Canaveral and has been since about 1983. So the current regulatory scheme in Cape Canaveral is your grandfathered provision and your general codes and ordinances that are applicable, such as nuisance ordinances and noise ordinances. This ordinance would propose specific regulations pertaining to vacation rentals within the area that the legislature currently is allowing municipalities to regulate, in my opinion. So the ordinance is pretty extensive. I'm not going to go through every single section, maybe just open it up for discussion, but I just give you a high view of the ordinance and for the audience's benefit as well. The ordinance establishes additional definitions in the code to establish the regulatory scheme that's being proposed, such as definitions of bedroom, pre-existing contract, what a vacation rental is and what it isn't based on state law. The ordinance establishes a registration process whereby vacation rentals, as defined by law, would register with the city. That is something that we've discussed extensively relative to the host compliance software that the council considered and has given direction on. And the registration process can be done utilizing forms that the city promulgates and can be done electronically. The idea would be to have a registration process consistent with the business tax receipt process by fiscal year. So the ordinance establishes that. The ordinance establishes what needs to be submitted by vacation rental owners when they register with the city. So those stated in here. In addition to registration, the ordinance proposes a maximum overnight occupancy for vacation rentals of 2 occupants per bedroom as defined herein, plus 2 additional occupants per vacation rental. So if you had a 3-bedroom unit, it would be 3 times 2, 6, plus 2 additional, 8. And there would be a cap, and that doesn't include 6-year-olds or under. And that cap would have a sliding scale based on square footage of a home, where the cap would go from eight occupants to 14 occupants, depending on the size of the home. The occupancy cap is based on an overnight stay. It's not an occupancy cap for day visitors or of the sort. It's an overnight cap that's being suggested. The cap does not apply when the vacation rental is being physically owner occupied as defined in the code. This is truly those transient type rentals for the vacation rental unit that would come into play under the occupancy cap. There are proposed requirements for posting safety and information notice in the vacation rental unit. And the things that need to be on that notice are, of course, the name and address of the vacation rental owner or agent that can be contacted in the event of emergencies, like the maximum occupancy cap, Cape Canaveral address and telephone number for the sheriff's office, the fire department, a copy of additional information that's provided by the city, to include things such as when the solid waste pickup regulations are, parking restrictions, regulations of sea turtles, and the city's existing beach and nuisance regulations. The thought process being, these vacation rentals are being occupied by transients. They're not familiar with the city's ways and regulations. The idea would be to make sure that that information is clearly posted for people, obviously, hopefully comply with the city's rules and regulations. The ordinance proposes an inspection process that the city can request, and that would be arranged by appointment, so the city can ensure Florida building codes, fire prevention codes, international property maintenance codes are being adequately complied with, especially given the transient nature of vacation rentals. It imposes some duties on the vacation rental owner to be available not only for the sheriff's office or the fire department, but in the event of other emergencies, and just being available for their guests. There's a duty on the vacation rental to ensure compliance with the county sexual offender and predator ordinance. That is something that they need to comply with under the county's ordinance. This ordinance reemphasizes that point and proposes that the vacation rental do what needs to be done relative to the county sexual predator and offender ordinance. The ordinance also addresses accessory structures used as sleeping facilities under the law. Those are not vacation rental units. Therefore, you can prohibit independently renting or leasing structures that are not intended to be dwelling units. So don't get hung up on, while there is a prohibition for barring vacation rentals, accessory structures used for sleeping facilities are not dwelling units and are not vacation rentals. So that activity can be prohibited, and this ordinance proposes prohibiting that. The ordinance proposes prohibiting independently renting rooms. So the vacation rental in its entirety would have to be rented. Vacation rental couldn't be turned into a boarding house where individual rooms are rented to different people. That's a different kind of use. There's a provision in here that prohibits a vacation rental from being advertised and held out as a entertainment venue. YouTube, what some of these more famous vacation rentals around the country are used for. They're used for, basically to hold a party, and then that's it. This ordinance would prohibit that type of activity. I should also add that vacation rentals that we're talking about here are those that are in residential areas of the city, zoning areas. This ordinance, the registration aspects covers all vacation rentals, but there's certain aspects of this ordinance that, in the 7-day rule that don't apply to commercial zones in some cases. The ordinance also provides, penalty provision for violations. So that's really kind of like that was a long presentation, but it's really kind of a high level introduction to this ordinance.
Very good. Council? Please.
Okay.
Comments?
I might want to answer some questions after everybody talks, but this is definitely a hot topic, and I've definitely been notified by some citizens in our city. What I'd like to see, I mentioned it to Todd. Todd, as far as residential buildings in our city, do you know approximately how many there are?
Dave, I believe you had given a number by host compliance, a guesstimate, I believe.
Evening.
Good evening.
Hello, Dave.
Good evening. There we go. Councilmember Brown, I'm going to say approximately between 350 and 450 units. We'll have a much better number when and if the council decides to move forward with the Granicus host compliance software. But that would be initially at this point in time, I would say roughly between 350 and 450.
Okay. And Todd, I know that the city has notification as far as if you want to send some mail to every resident in a unit, how much is that going to, you've got 350 to 450. What does it charge? You have bulk mail that you can use what I'm thinking of, every resident building in the city needs to be notified that they can go to a particular website and this information is listed on reference the short-term rental. Everybody needs to be notified without exception, in my opinion.
Yeah,
so there's no excuses when this.
That's a very good question. Depending on the outcome, if the city council does move forward with this ordinance and the contract, as Dave said, we owe it to our citizens, our residents, to let them know that this is a program that is out there. So there's going to be an outreach required. So we'll be prepared to answer that question at the next council meetings, depending on how things go here tonight.
Okay. And another question, I don't know, you probably know real quick, David, for a fine such as abuse of the short-term rentals, I'd like to see the fines increased, especially for people that are just not going to abide by what we're trying to.
Yeah, Councilmember Brown, that's certainly a policy decision that the council can weigh in on. And that's as simple as updating the fee resolution that the council certainly has the ability to do at any given point in time. So if that's a policy decision the council wants to tackle, then we're, as a staff, I don't want to talk for Todd, but we can present something to you.
Let's, Dave, let's do this. Let's get together a list of the applicable fees and email them to all the council members so they know exactly what we are doing now for fees. And then if it's the desire of council after reviewing them to come back and request that we increase those, we can do that.
I think, was the question fines or fees?
Fines.
Yeah, fines. Okay. I mean, those are established by ordinance. So that's something that we could look at before second reading. I mean, there are fines that are specifically listed in on the top of page 15, so we can.
Yeah, and I would assume, like all the other, this would go through the code enforcement special magistrate process.
Exactly.
And the special magistrate would be kind of have jurisdiction and responsibility for establishing those fines. But if the council through an ordinance revision could set some parameters. I mean, I think we can address the council's desires. We can put that into a policy for your review and action if that's what you're interested in.
Okay, and right now I have one other thing where we mentioned the maximum occupancy restriction set forth in subsection 1 shall not apply when the vacation rental is being physically owner occupied. That just seems like you're just asking for problems with that, the way that's written.
There's a definition that is up in the definitions. Maybe it's not in the definition section. Maybe it's in that section.
While Anthony is looking that up, council member, I mean, it's if the council is concerned and would like us to look at some tightening up some language, I think what your concern is there's a 15 or 20 member party going on in a house and somebody says I'm the owner. But perhaps we could look at something like limiting it to the owner and immediate family or something like that. I mean, I guess I'm just looking for is your specific concern about just these big parties going on and lots of commotion, just giving a blank check. Yeah, I understand, and we can take a look at tightening that up if that's what the council is interested in.
Okay, I reserve the right to come back with some more questions at the end, but
all right.
They
give to
Councilmember Brown, in the definitions of owner occupied, it defines them, and it says that they are a person who does not pay rent. So I think there's a defining difference right there. If you're not paying rent, then it's not being used as a vacation rental. And I think that's why that's exempted from this. It's exempted from this.
You could have an owner occupied and an owner's guest. Same time. We're talking about just putting an owner in there, and you have to just. But what if you have an owner and an owner's guest?
Right.
That's not family or internet family, they're just
right.
Guests.
If that's the concern of the council to tighten that up, I think we can look at some language to do that.
That's it for right now for me.
I don't want to put words in the council's mouth if that's what the concern is.
Okay. I think this is a positive step forward for us as a council and for a city. Many of us have received numerous complaints, and many of our residents who live in a residential neighborhood want to be able to sleep in peace and quiet and not have parking issues, et cetera. So I'm very happy with the staff and with some of our residents who really have put their heart and soul into this. Thank you.
Yes, I just have a couple of questions. This is a very important subject in our city. I've gotten a lot of emails and calls about it, and this is a very thorough ordinance. My question is to Anthony. Bill number 522 that's going to be heard in March. Is that going to undo all of this that we're doing?
Okay, it's possible. I mean, it's possible. Can't predict what the legislature is going to do. But they're looking at taking away more home rule, not giving municipalities and counties more of it. They want to take it away. So it's possible.
If we get this on the books before they do, does that grandfather us in like the other?
I think under the current grandfathering provision, no. But you never know. If they did want to proceed with more regulations, they may attempt to grandfather existing ordinances that are on the books. I don't know. I can't predict the legislature. There's one possibility where you could adopt something like this, and the legislature preempts more home rule authority, but allows existing ordinances prior to their enactment of new legislation to remain on the books. I don't know.
And then my other question was, if we go ahead with this and hire this company, the host compliance, if legislator changes or preempts us,
Right.
what happens to our contract with them?
Well, we would write a provision in the contract that would be like a force majeure event or some sort. And, if we're not allowed to register anymore, then, that contract would be terminated.
Right.
We would deal with that contingency in the contract.
Okay. And then my other thing is, it's the senator that filed this is Senator Diaz from Miami and Jason Fisher from Jacksonville. And I encourage everyone to contact your local senators and representatives as well as them and ask them to please support home rule, because what happens in Miami and Jacksonville doesn't apply to our little city and the people that live in our residence. So, our hands are somewhat tied when we have the state legislator undoing what we're trying to do. So I just want to have everyone, call your senator, write your senator email. It's Senator Diaz from Miami and Jason Fisher from Jacksonville. And that's all I have right now.
Question to Dave again, and you might have shared this in the past, but similar to Councilmember Brown's question, roughly, depending on what we find out, but 350 to 450 units are in the city of Cape Canaveral currently using them as short-term rentals. Just making sure that that's what that number was. I think we've all been impacted. We sometimes get a lot of the same emails with these, and it's certainly emotional when we do get complaints. I guess I'm looking more to, do we have a number roughly in a year? And not like anything, there's always bad actors. There's the one property that's the repeat. And I've experienced that, as you know, but other properties are, never raise a red flag, run it fine, but total in a year, how many complaints, or maybe if it's easier to think per month, from unique properties would you think that we get regarding these issues?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers right here with me, but I would say it's relatively few on a monthly basis, and it does flare up different times of the year. I think there's peaks and valleys, and I will say that during COVID times, it's been particularly bad too. And I have a few theories, but I'm not going to, it's not time to talk about that. But I would say that there's relatively few on a monthly basis. I would say less than 5 on a monthly basis, and given some months, even, probably none.
Thank you. And so, my concern is when we go back to, we have the problems in the summary when we read them, it says it a few times, kind of the same thing, but just over communicating it that, I'll just read here so the public can say, even when regulations, vacation rentals can disrupt the character of a predominantly full-time residential neighborhoods and create negative compatibility impacts, including excessive and/or, here comes the problems, late night noise, 1, parking violations, 2, increased instances of police and code enforcement calls. That's kind of a secondary effect of it. And accumulation of trash, as well as impacts on public health and safety and welfare. Some examples of, public health or safety might be, as Anthony, our city attorney, they don't understand sea turtle ordinances. So they're out, they don't understand dogs on the beach maybe and things like that. So I get it. But when you boil it down to what the problems are, it's noise, parking violations, trash. And what's not really mentioned, I think we all agree on, probably the most difficult thing we've had to enforce is the 7-day minimum. So I'd sum it up to those are I think the big four: trash, parking, 7-day minimum, and noise. And when I'm reading through this, as we heard our city attorney read, it's a lot. I mean, this is dense. And my concern is that this might be administratively costly. I think it's going very far to fix noise, trash, and parking. And I do see how a lot of this can help with the 7-day consecutive, but for the number that we heard, 3 to 5 and subject to, be verified, it could find out it's more, could find out it's less. That to me, and just to reiterate, those 3 to 5 are really upset, those complaints from my experience. But I don't want to overcrowd. They're really upset with the frequency of this actually happening. And write a very lengthy ordinance that I think is going to put us into some more challenges. So my concern is there are some things in here that I like and I think will definitely help with the 7-day minimum. I have a hard time connecting how this ordinance will improve trash, which it'd be interesting out of those complaints, how many of them are actually trash related? I don't think that's a big one. I think noise and parking are really the big ones. And those are very apparent. When somebody's in the right of way, when someone's in the street, our code enforcement or our deputies go handle that. And that's a matter of notifying the deputies and our local precinct and or code enforcement. And to me, when Florida preempted us, took away our ability to regulate, and while we were grandfathered in, I think that their intent, and as Councilmember Callum brought up, is really important to respect. In the same way we respect the county's law with sexual predators, and we want to reinforce that here. I think their intent, as I understand it, is that they said you can't treat a property owner who wants to rent their property out for a short period of time really a whole lot differently than somebody who lives in their property. And I think we are going a little too far, and we would actually expedite what the state is going to do. I think it's ordinances like these that will frustrate the state because when we start talking about, I'll just share some examples we talked about tonight. If they're paying rent or not, how are we going to verify that? Are we going to ask people to see their contract if they're paying rent, or as the mayor shared, there's scenarios where people just are not paying rent. I think that's government getting a little too far into two parties working together. We start doing things that we heard tonight about the occupancy, the 2 bedrooms plus 2, except for children under the age of 6. I mean, really, we're going to now start telling them to list the ages of the people in their home. I think that's a little bit of an overreach. And really, I don't know how that fixes trash, parking, and noise. I don't connect that. The registration process, I think that makes sense. I like that. I think that, being able to have inventory and register, and I like Councilmember Brown's idea. I'm a big fan, as y'all know, of direct mail, being able to mail them so they have every opportunity to do that. The inspections upon request, I think that's becomes a little arbitrary. Now we can pick and choose who we're going to inspect and who we're not going to inspect. I mean, if everyone went through an inspection, that would be one thing, but we're saying that, if we feel there's a need to inspect, I can see that as being something really treating a property owner differently. I mean, if homeowners, I live in Cape Canaveral for the past 10 years, And, you know, I know renters that live here and they love this place. They're transient, or non-homestead. But I can't imagine them being subject to an inspection for what? What triggers the inspection? Too many noise complaints? Too much trash? Now we get to inspect? I think that's a little too far. The accessory structure, I don't think that that's a big problem. And correct me if I'm wrong, but, you know, it's just another rule that if somebody, you know, has, you know, a camper out in their yard and they want to help somebody stay for a place for a week, say, hey, come stay in my camper. I don't have a problem with them, you know, helping somebody out to do that. And, you know, if they want to compensate to do that, I think that that's fair. I can see the concern if it becomes a repeat, continuous, you know, revolving door. But that one is just something we want to, I think, look at a little bit closer. The idea of entertainment venue where, you know, as we heard about YouTube and you're in a party, I mean, that's, I think, really discriminatory because it's like, now we're saying you can't come to Cape Canaveral and party. Well, why not? Like, what we really want to say, I think, is you can't break our noise ordinances. Because do we have a problem with partying or do we have a problem with noise? We get back to those core three: noise, trash, parking. And so why don't we just stick to enforcing noise, trash, parking? And to do that, I think it's a matter of having you know, the resources that our deputies and our code enforcement need visually to monitor. Trash is visual. When you see that, that needs to be observed, reported, and handled. Parking is visual. And noise, we have an ordinance for noise already. It's very simple. And for the record, residents who lived here long time break the noise ordinance too. And so it's not, I 100% get the idea of how, you know, these short-term rentals are continuous repeat noise ordinance violations or parking. And that's where I think we can target and focus. And I would be in favor of having an escalating, you know, first time you have a noise ordinance, it's a fine or a warning. The second time it's a fine, and to tag it to that property owner. So the revolving door of the guest, it comes back on that property owner, and that they have to respect the ordinances that are already written. We don't need to write another word to enforce noise. We don't need another word for the trash or the parking. The 7 consecutive day is the little black box that I think a registration will help. But some of the things that I've shared in host compliance, I think, helps with that. But this to me is a long list of things for 3 to 5 complaints a month that takes it too far, which means I think the majority of short-term rental owners are responsible and they do a good job with their property. I think that some of them hire, I was talking to a resident, they hire property management companies. And if I'm wrong, if the majority are not responsible, I just want to see the data that shows that. Because if we have 350 to 450 units and we're getting 3 to 5 a month, why don't we focus on the small batch that are causing a problem and not penalize the responsible ones? And that's it. I've got a few more things that I think, but I've pretty much, I think, covered it all. I want to fix the problems, just like I think this whole council does. But the whole occupancy section, I think, is too far in requiring them, you know, just the idea that we're in people's bedroom. So we're literally asking them how many bedrooms, we want an interior sketch. Only 2 people can sleep in that bedroom. Unless it's, I mean, that to me, I want the government out of my bedroom. I want to be left alone. I want to be able to sleep in my bed. I don't want to submit an interior sketch to my local city. And I don't want them asking me the age of my children. And so there's room for improvement. There's some really good stuff in here that I want to keep. We do get 2 readings at this. And I think I'll hold off on any more comments, but I have a hard time supporting it as it's written. But I want the council to know that I really do want to pass something that fixes these problems. Thank you.
I just have a quick, talking about some of the things that we've discussed already, but I just want to point out that Space Coast League of Cities and Florida League of Cities has taken up this whole hot topic of vacation rentals, and they're on it, and they have all kinds of advocacy teams, and locally, of course, you know, the advocacy, this is like the #1 hot topic, along with affordable housing. Thank you.
I got a couple of comments on it. As far as the noise, parking, and trash is 3 of the biggest topics. Also, I think the occupancy of it is kind of, I surely wouldn't want to be living next door to a B&B that has 14 people in there partying. I think we have 2 people per bedroom. If it's 3 bedroom, there should be 6 people. And we also clarify how many people are in the family of that 6 people. So you're really trying to really search in a lot of stuff. We have in our regular residential ordinance that only 2 people of the same blood can occupy a house along with the children. So that means you can't have Mr. and Mrs. Smith and Mr. and Mrs. Jones living in the same house. It's in our regular residential zoning ordinances. So we get into this, I realize it's kind of a party venue, because I know a lot of people that get 2 couples and they go to Key West or they go to wherever they can go to get these places and do that. But when you got 6 bedrooms, you'd have to have 7 bedrooms in one house to fulfill 14 people. So I don't know of any house in Cape Canaveral that's got more than 5. He's stretching it to find one with 5. But that's the point. It's the occupancy, I think, should just be 2 people per bedroom, and not invading your bedroom. I'm just saying you got to put an occupancy number somewhere on this thing. Why not have 60 people occupy the house? Because at 14 in a 4-bedroom or a 5-bedroom, which don't exist hardly, you're gonna have people sleeping on the floor, pull out couches or air mattresses or whatever, and then how many kids you got in there? Doesn't even include the children under 6 years old. I'd like to see us really work on this area right here and put a number per bedroom. If you got 4 bedrooms, fine, you can have 8 people. But then you got maybe 8 people of 4 different family blood. So it really multiplies.
Mayor, if it's already in our occupancy rules, wouldn't it apply to vacation rentals automatically?
No, the vacation rentals doesn't really fall under the residential R1, R2 district.
Well, they are in the R1 and
True, I
R2.
understand, but you're talking about a different animal. Mr. Berganese, would you kind of bring in kind of why we have that in our other ordinance and why would it not apply here, or why should we have it apply here? Or it's
Under the current zoning district regulations for residential properties, the city has allows single-family dwellings, two-family dwellings, multifamily dwellings. And there's a definition, as you noted, Mayor, for family that's in the zoning code. And that definition establishes an occupancy level. You were correct that typically groups of persons that are related by blood or marriage or adoption as a single family housekeeping unit are permitted to occupy single family dwelling, regardless of the amount, really. However, the definition goes on to say if you're not that type of family, then not more than 4 adults who are not necessarily so related, living together under one roof as a single household unit. So in a single family zoning district, arguably the cap for non-related individuals is 4 adults living as a single household unit. Vacation rentals, on the other hand, they're more of a transient use, and whether or not they fall under that traditional family definition, don't know. It could kind of go either way, I think. So the vacation rental occupancy establishes more of a bright line for that particular use on the occupancy level. And it's not for purposes of getting in the bedroom, it's for purposes of determining what the maximum occupancy would be for a vacation rental. And you can either add it up based on square footage of a home as one method, or you can just add up the number of bedrooms and multiply it by some number to get to a maximum occupancy. And that's really what we were trying to achieve with maximum occupancy, is that when we're dealing with a vacation rental, trying to create some parameters for the real bad actors and not interfere with all of the good actors that are currently leasing their dwelling units as vacation rentals. So Dave and staff and Todd, we talked about what would be reasonable, and that's how we ended up with this sliding scale based on square footage, trying not to impact those legitimate property owners that are leasing their property out as vacation rentals, but putting some parameters out there that in the event you do have a bad actor, you get something on the books where an over-occupied dwelling unit is wreaking havoc on a neighborhood. Some of the other provisions that are in here are for that purpose as well. It's to create these outer limits. Not so much maybe we have firsthand experience with some of them, but other communities are. And if you get one of those bad actors, you'd be thankful that you actually had an explicit provision in the code to enforce. I'm sure our sheriff would feel more comfortable having an explicit provision in the code rather than, a vague what if code to try to enforce. And I heard some of the comments too that we intentionally tried to stay away from imposing specific, unlike a lot of other communities, specific regulations on vacation rentals, on noise, solid waste, and those types of regulations, because as Councilman Morrison said, they're generally covered in the code anyway. So we didn't want to throw that on top of vacation rentals. The city would just continue to enforce its general codes on noise and solid waste and parking, and not, creating something special for vacation rentals. But, in my experience and seeing some of the issues, your parking problem is a direct consequence of over occupancy of some of these homes. That was one of the reasons too we put an occupancy provision here for you all to consider, is to try to do something to help the few, those cases where we had a lot of different parking problems. Few more comments.
Mr. Mayor, can I chime back? But I think that's my question, is if it's parking or noise or ordinance, why don't we just enforce our own ordinance? So if these are like secondary offenses, so if the word you used, Anthony, is wreaking havoc, I would assume wreaking havoc is making too much noise. I think we know of some stories we could agree on what that means. I think there were some stories of people were up on the rooftop of their vacation rental. They were making noise. So if I understand, instead of coming in and saying you violated our noise ordinance, or you've parked all over the street and now you're in the right of way, and fining them for those two, why can't that just be enough?
Yeah, I mean, that's can possibly in some instances be enough, and in other cases maybe not. Because
just think, like, what is an example of wreaking havoc or causing problems that our existing ordinance does not address in the big three? Now, the 7-day minimum, I agree. Our existing ordinance is very weak there. But when you read through this summary, it says over and over again, noise, late night activities, on-street parking, says it 3, 4, maybe even 5 times through here. So it lists 8 points out, but it's really just 2 or 3. That's it. I think, I don't want to overstate it, but I don't want to write a whole bunch of ordinances in here when we really might just have, why can't we enforce the ordinance the way it's written today? I think that's what I'm wrestling with. And I don't like that we're writing this new ordinance just for short-term rentals. I think that's where Tallahassee does get heartburn. But I'm all about regulating parking, the things that we've mentioned. I think, to me, why can't we add the tools? Maybe it's another code enforcement officer. Maybe it's Cocoa Beach has a parking division. They created a 3rd branch in their city. I don't know if that's a good idea, but certainly made sense with them. They've certainly got more commercial development on the beach, but their deputies aren't, as I understand it, primarily responsible, or their city police department isn't responsible for parking or code enforcement. They've got parking enforcement. We know that's a problem here in Cape Canaveral. Especially spring break's going to be here. We've seen it. It happens bad on Washington Avenue. It's going to happen around the parks. And our deputies have worked very hard to enforce that. But that's an idea that would go, yeah, that would fix it. I would hope it would. But
yeah, I mean, from the code enforcement standpoint, I don't disagree with what you're saying. Those are very good reactionary tools to deal with those types of code enforcement violations. This type of ordinance, some of the provisions are meant to not introduce the problem into the residential area in the first place.
Okay.
So there's a little bit of that going on in this ordinance.
Mm-hmm.
So the city is not so reactionary. And again, you all, the policy makers, you decide what needs to be done. We try to give you like soup to nuts ideas for you to discuss and determine whether or not you need to put some of those bumpers in the outer parameters just in case. But the registration is a different issue.
I have a question. I'm just curious. I know that staff has been talking to the host compliant company. And what I'm thinking, are some of these things standard in the contracts and they deal with this every day? So is some of that, did you take some of that language and put it into the ordinance? I'm just curious if these are standard types of things that cities use for vacation.
These provisions are used not only within the state of Florida, of concepts, but also elsewhere in the country. With respect to host compliance, the registration provisions in this ordinance were definitely written with their service in mind. Because we've seen what they can provide in terms of data and how they handle the registration process. I think is pretty neat from what we can gather, that we try to stay within the parameters of their system.
The other comment I have, I think that the whole idea is to be proactive. And even though we know about our ordinances and our code enforcement ordinances, people who have vacation rentals might not be from the city or even from the state and be familiar with some of the ordinances. So I think it's a good idea to be proactive and put them into the ordinance so that whoever is going to rent vacation rentals and own a vacation rentals, it's all very clear to them. So they aren't surprised when code enforcement or the police come to their door.
Yeah, and I think I agree that if we print it out, like here are the rules on noise on parking, and like Councilmember Brown said, and we distributed that, like here's our packet, and David and I have chatted about this, and Todd, I think we have too, and probably something being worked on to inform them up front of the ordinances. I think that's a great idea. It'd be great if Airbnb, VR, whatever the names of all of them are, would put it up on their website. I think that's fantastic. But to think that we need to go write a whole nother list of rules to, as I think Anthony said, to not introduce these problems that are happening 3 to 5 times a month. This is a lot. So that was it. Thank you.
Well, Anthony, the question I have is, I know you don't have to give me the particular city, but I know that you have some other cities that you also handle as far as their attorney. Do each one of these cities that have the short-term rentals, do they have a special caveat or special rules and regulations regarding their short-term rentals, or are some of them just use their current codes that they have in place?
Both. It depends on the community. Typically, the tourist destination cities have to really contend with this problem. It's more prevalent. Look at some of your recitals in the ordinance, Airbnb statistics. Cape Canaveral is one heck of a popular destination, according to Airbnb in 2020, 136% increase. The city of Cape Canaveral was in, I think, the top 10 or top 15 in the world in terms of incremental increase. So that was an interesting statistic that other communities may not have, but it's your tourist destinations that really have a more prevalent problem. But Airbnb is so successful now, it's bleeding into suburban areas, non-tourist destination areas, because people are renting out their homes in traditional owner-occupied neighborhoods, and those cities are dealing with that aspect of it versus more the touristy aspects that Cape Canaveral, I think, has to do
So,
with.
in layman's terms, basically what you're saying is cities such as Cape Canaveral and our tourist destination, in the way that we have our Airbnbs, we need something more in place than the standard code enforcement rules that we have on the books. That's what you're saying. Am I correct?
I think that's an option for you all to decide what you want to do there, but
I think you answered it by your dissertation.
I think you have a bigger of a problem than some cities that are not tourist destinations, and you all need to decide whether you need to tighten up your regulations. Would not be uncommon. There's some in Brevard that have done it already.
Mayor, I'd like to make one comment. I think, and this is how I think about it, and this is certainly just input for the council to consider. Our current tools are reactionary. I mean, when we're talking about noise issues, parking issues, those are after the fact. When they're happened or they've already happened is when those type of ordinances come into play, and we can use those tools through code enforcement or our BCSO. A lot of what we're suggesting tonight to the council for consideration is to put some stuff in place so we can deal with these issues prior to the problem occurring. And that's significant. It's proactive versus reactive. And anyways, just something to consider. I think it's
To go to the Mayor Pro Tem's, point. I mean, Cocoa Beach has vacation rental regulations. Satellite Beach, I believe, has vacation rental regulations. So you go from Cape Canaveral and head south, your neighbors have put specific regulations on the books involving vacation rentals. Cape Canaveral does not. Not saying that you need to be like them. You chart your own course from time to time. There's no doubt about that, but they're doing it, and that's just for your information.
Just comment on the occupancy load again. Let's just take like 14 people. You can take an average of maybe 3 people in a car or 2 people in a car. There's your parking problem. Most of these places,
Right.
You allow 7 couples. Most of the time, that's going to be 7 cars. And then you got the children on top of them in that place. So that creates your parking problem right there. You need to limit it to whatever. You got a 4-bedroom house, you got to have 4 cars. And then let's just hope that they got parking for four cars on the property. I've seen that where they're parked out in the street overnight at these places because of the overcrowdedness of it. That's basically on it. And then I have other issues with some of it, but it's not really pressing to me as the parking issue is. Noise ordinance, we have noise ordinance. We have other ordinances that take care of these other problems, which I don't think we need to write into this ordinance, another noise ordinance to cover that. We can use our regular ordinance. But the parking, I definitely got an issue with this parking the way it's laid out. It's just, we've limited a family in a regular home. Here we're just turning the B&Bs, just turning it loose to 14 people in one house. That's party time.
Yeah.
I have problems with that part of it.
I just wanted to say, I think that the problem is that, and we've heard it from people, and also we've had, people come up and talk to us about it. And it's not the good people, it's the bad people that these things will apply to. And I think that with no restrictions, we have out-of-state people that are coming to our city, buying houses, flipping them, and turning them into vacation rentals, which to me, that is a business in a residential area. And, it disrupts the character of our neighborhoods for the people that live here and pay taxes, and not that those owners don't. But I just think, if you're a good person, a good renter, you own the property and you're doing everything right, this won't affect you at all. But it's a way to be proactive rather than reactive, like they were saying. I think it's, overreaching will only affect the people that are being bad.
I got one right next door to me, and you don't even know it's really vacation rental other than there's different Carter every other day, whatever it is. But
And then,
I don't have
are
a
we
problem.
putting an extra burden on the sheriff's department to be the people that have to regulate what the short-term rental people are doing, the bad ones? I just think if we are proactive, we're better, and the other cities have these regulations in place. We definitely need to
Sure.
have them in place as well.
It's not, we're gonna get to the public here. I'm just want to be sure council's got their comments made. Manager, yep.
Yes, sir. I just wanted, for the sake of progress, want to point out that there are really 8 actionable items in this ordinance, and they're listed C through J. And of those 8, I'm hearing comment about 3 of them, and I'll just list them all in order. So the first one is registration. I think we're all fine with registration. The second one is maximum overnight occupancy. That's one of the 3 that's being discussed. The third one is the posting of safety information. I haven't heard any negative comments about that. The fourth one is the requirement for an inspection. That has been commented on. The fifth one is duty for owner to be available. That seems to be okay. Sixth one is duty to ensure the registration of sex offenders. No comments on that. The seventh one is accessory structures used as sleeping facilities. There's been some comment on that. And finally, the last and the 8th one is the independent room rentals. I haven't heard any comment on that. So if what I'm hearing accurately conveys, I think our areas of concern are about maximum overnight occupancy section, the inspection section, and accessory structure section, just those 3. We're spending a lot of time talking about noise and parking. Those are existing ordinances. We're gonna enforce those anyways. That's not really part of this. So for the purposes of moving this ordinance along, I would suggest perhaps council consider limiting the inspection, limiting the discussion points to those problematic areas of the ordinance. And I believe, if I'm correct, it's just those 3: maximum overnight occupancy, inspections, and accessory structures.
Mr. Mayor, yes, thank you, Todd. On the proactive, on the idea that you want to get out in front of this, that might be a philosophy difference. I'm of the opinion that you wait till the crime to be you wait for the crime to be committed first, and then we live in a reactive country. That you have liberty and you can live your life and conduct yourself in a way until you either hurt someone or take their stuff. And I'm trying to find the violence in this, where these property owners and property rights is what's at stake. So pollution, dumping trash on somebody is a violence. So when that happens, we should react. We shouldn't get out in front of trash. Mayor brought up a very good point on the occupancy. I think, that's already solved with our parking, that it's going to be nearly impossible for someone to be there. But really, why are we writing all these square footage and measurements and formulas and calculations when we can just say, hey, you can fit 2 cars here. And when they park in the street, our deputies are on it. That's reactionary, that we can roam and conduct ourselves independently and freely until we actually commit some sort of crime. I mean, this is, you don't just ban things. It is very effective, don't get me wrong. I mean, it will work. We will, if you want to shut it down, you just say, 3 Airbnb is only 3 people per house maximum, or whatever. If you don't want to spread COVID, you just lock everyone in their house and they don't leave. If you don't want people to get in car accidents, you say don't get in the car. That's all proactive, but it's limiting our freedoms and our liberties. And I think that there's more responsible property owners out there, I know there are, than not. Who are renting them for short periods of time. And to say, I think the comment, Councilmember Kellum, that, hey, for those who are, already abiding by the rules, this doesn't sting. I think it does sting. It adds a whole lot of red tape to the process, and it gives our city staff some discretionary inspection and things that I don't think we need to do. But the biggest concern internally for the city is this is an administrative and very costly issue. If I had to go through and recap what you said, Todd, I think I would strike through the occupancy limit. I don't think that we're going to have occupancy issues and without already breaking a parking issue. So where there's parking in the street, we enforce that, but I think we could strike through all of that, in my humble opinion. And taking out, yes, basically maximum occupancy over right, section D, line number 8, page 10 of 16. I don't think any of that is needed as long as we're enforcing our parking. And let's be honest, do you really have a problem with or let's just say 9 people in a 2,000 square foot home if they're quiet and they're all a family? And I don't like the whole family and blood thing either. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's way too far. But just if there's 9 people in a home together and they're peaceful, like the mayor said, 5 in a SUV, 4 in a sedan. They pull in, they take up their 2 parking spots, they go in, they spend 7 days, they leave. What's the problem? If the way our ordinance is written, that's not allowed. But what I think we're doing is proactive, which I don't agree with, is we're saying, no, but 9, 10, 11, 12 gets noisy. That's more likely to be noisy, but it's not always the case. So I think we need to err on the side of liberty with this and say, if you can have 9, but you better be quiet and you better not disrupt your neighbors and you better not park in the lot. So occupancy is a section that I think, I do like the registration. I think that's really good. I would like to make it as simple as possible. An online form would be ideal. And I love the idea of mailing them all. Section C, kind of going backwards there. The posting of the safety and the information notice, you know, I think that's fine. The duties of the vacation rental owner to be available. I mean, does that mean if we call you, how do we enforce that? So I don't understand, like, why we would. I'm trying to think of a scenario where somebody would, why we would need to get in touch with them and why it would be a problem if we couldn't. Like, don't we already have powers to handle a situation? How is this any different than if I leave my house abandoned? And, you know, if I leave my house and it's alone and a leak's busted or something, I'm trying to think of a scenario. So I think we could get rid of section G. And there are a few others. I'm going to pause there, make sure everything's okay. But, Mr. Mayor.
Good time to pause. We're right at 8 o'clock. We said we'd take a break. We'll take 5 minutes and we'll come back on this subject. And if you want to speak, please fill out a card. I know if you want to speak, you got a card. Give it to the deputy, and if you want to speak on this when you come back, we'll surely let you speak. But we're going to have a 5-minute recess. We'll reconvene at 5 minutes after 8, exactly 8 o'clock. Okay, we're ready.
Yeah, and I'll just wrap it up. There are some issues in here, and I think upon second reading, I think we can work through the rest of them if that's the council's will, but I think the occupancy is a big one. The 3-year log of all bookings, that one, I don't understand how we would verify that. Maybe there's a solution, but I don't like the idea that we're having to review these logs. I just think it keeps coming back to those big three. Now, I'm more interested in if we move forward with the software host compliance, do they need the log? Because if they need the log, I wonder if we need them or their software, excuse me. But I was under the understanding that we wouldn't need a log necessarily. But coming back to, just how do you even verify that it's a valid log? I think bad actors will always go down that route. Yes, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
You guys have anything? If not, we'll go out to public. Did you fill out a card? Are you, Joe? Are you Joe? Okay, I have to take them in the order they come to me. Bye. I have one from Kay Jackson. That was the first one we got. Name and address.
I have a couple of questions in regards to this issue. Number one, it sounds like we've got around 350, 400 wells. Are they single family dwellings?
Very few of them are. Probably less than, again, these are all guesstimates, less than 50 that we know of. And that's one of the things that we're looking at host compliance to actually give us a lot better idea of what's actually happening out there in the city. But the ones who have registered with the city, probably less than 5% of them are single family homes.
BTRs.
And how many condo townhouses do we have this? And there's a reason I'm asking these things.
Understand.
Because as we look at researching what we're doing here as far as our legislation, we have a lot of condos in this community. And this is a small percentage. It sounds more like residential communities. That's why I'm curious, is this single family homes? All condo complexes have dogs in them, just like I said before. But clearly find some of the things that you find. So, as we look at legislating ourselves out of this, and we're getting 3 to 5 complaints, at what point and have we done the costings of these things? Are we going to spend more money than the actual issue has? And one thing I saw, I listened to, was the fact that we're talking about occupancy. And I understand, you know what, I have a large home in Orlando. I have a very large extended by the occupancy. When we are looking at this, I know that I questioned this exact same thing before, and there was an existing group of people here in the city that was already in place, that knows the occupancy limits very well. They're on fire. They told me if occupancy is all in it, and we would have to address it, it becomes a safety issue. So where I can appreciate what you're trying to do on the front end, sometimes we have no way to really determine whether someone will violate until the violation happens. So, we already have occupancy guidelines that are determined in the city from the fire code. That's where anything that goes in, from what I understand, whether it's a single family resident or a condo. Now, parking, I see it's the same thing. I was asking because condo complexes have parking limitations, and they will certainly let me know. Correct? So that's what we're trying to do. Now, I totally understand that we have to set that in place. And that has been an issue as well. And I've seen that over the years. I know that's something that's been here longer than I have. But I literally can step out on A1A right now, and there's hardly anyone here. And I'll never forget what the thing comes in one time. We were trying to do something. We can post things. Right now, I know that we have our periods that are really busy. Right now, this past year, most vegetables of this city are having a hard time getting something. And when we go by the 7-day guidelines, as far as I see their economy, we go by the 7-day guidelines, their policy. So at what point do we want to legislate this? And I'm with you, believe me. I think everyone on my island would be a rich person operating out there. I would do it. Great. And right now, our office we have that hard a hard time. It's I was here to shut down. That shuttle shut down. It was with some 3 or 4 commercial problems. I mean, it was a huge, I wish I had the first time to buy everything. But I wish that we would look at guidelines and other like that and use the tools that we already have in place to enforce the things that are already there, just like fire code, all these things.
Thank you. Andrea Shea King.
And you're taking care of it. They're not there. So they're not. Second. Since regulations on top of regulations, it's not what that says. And so we want their business, so we want to know it's a destination person. Oh, city. I think the question is on the table, and I don't even know why I'm approaching it. And it's not as open to each other. But we need to come to know too. We need to get facts.
Thank you. Mr. Southgate? Thank you, sir. Thank you for your interest. Well, let me see if, I'm out of cards. Anybody else want to, Walmart, right? Yeah, come on. But state your name and make out a card and give it to them, please, for the record.
Got Lang, interesting. So first of all, I'm directly affected by this in multiple ways. I'm a tour guide. I do nature guiding here. I'm with one of the kayak companies. So my income is directly reflected by Airbnbs, things like that, vacation rentals. However, there is a spike in pricing in relation to this because now you have more demand. People are buying these properties just so they can make a buck on them. And me and my friends that were here earlier are also tour guides. We wouldn't be able to even work here if we didn't live with our parents right now. Like, we cannot afford to even rent here to begin with, just because of how tight it is. And we were full-time pretty much doing tour guides, making decent money, but when the costs are that close, and also with the blood thing where you can't have so many people living in residence, I fully understand that. At the same time, it can be difficult. In relation to your comment with being proactive is not necessarily good, because if you get in a car, if you don't want to get in a car accident, you shouldn't get in a car. Well, proaction on being injured in a car accident isn't not getting in a car, it's mandatory seatbelt laws and things like that. Putting things that put in some sort of safety stops in case those things happen. Also, is it really limiting parties? I mean, I don't think it's a bad thing to have parties, of course. But at the same time, not all those people necessarily have to stay the night there. So if you have a party, I don't think it's limiting parties. People can still have people at the Airbnb because it's not regulated by how many people are staying there overnight. And people can still stay at adjacent Airbnbs and things like that. And in relation to the sexual predator, pedophiles, or things like that, however that's included in here, are there any regulations potentially for them staying within close proximity of a school that would normally hinder where they can live to begin with? And now they can temporarily live directly adjacent to one of these places. That might be something to consider, on top of the fact that it's awesome to be a destination place. I love it. But there's some of us that are also trying to be up and coming people, and this does directly affect us. And just how many properties we are allowed to have directly affects how many properties are available for working class people that want to live here. My boss wouldn't even hire people. I mean, he's a great person, don't get me wrong. But when we were suggesting people to work here, he didn't want people that lived outside of a certain range because he wanted them to be able to be immediately available to work there. And if we had to live in Merritt Island or Melbourne or places like that, we wouldn't be able to do that position as well as we already do supporting our police. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, out of cards and speakers, and please fill out one for the record, please. For when you go, you just give it to the deputy or the clerk. Daniel.
Yes, sir. We have several hands raised on this item. I will attempt to go through who will raise their hand first. We'll start with Nate Schwartz.
Hello, this is Nate Schwartz, Cape Canaveral, Florida. How's everybody doing tonight? Can you hear me?
Hear you loud and clear.
Okay. How are we we on a vacation rental. Okay. How are we going to differentiate? Because I'm hearing all this sexual trafficking and all this terrible stuff going on. And if I own a $450,000 property, and it sounds like there's some, I'm not up to par with everything going on in Cape Canaveral, but it sounds like there's some serious like human trafficking stuff going on that everybody keeps on talking about, this sexual trafficking and all this terrible stuff going on. That's pretty terrible. But if you own a $450,000 property and people are coming from out of state paying top dollar, $300 a night to stay there, they're not paying for sex trafficking. They're coming with their families. And if we have a place at 8 and we have a 1,500 square foot place, I live in Melbourne, and so does my fiance. If we get any wind of dumbness going on, I'll police that shit. Sorry, I will police that myself, because that's just like, that's terrible. And I just can't see people. I'm sure if there's some low income residents where it might be $100,000 property or maybe a $200,000 property because it's beachside, and there are nasty people out there, and they can fill that place and do nasty things in there. But with a place like us, like, we're the best house on that block. And we go up there, we clean that place after a 7-day, we adhere to all the laws of the land, and we respect Cape Canaveral because it's a beautiful community, and we want to enhance that community as residents there. And when I go out across the street and I'm picking up needles off the floor and I see these drug addicts walking all over the place and I'm cleaning up after them, like I'm there to enhance the community. And I help my neighbors out, and all our neighbors have our phone numbers and stuff. And if one of our guests get loud, they call us and we will discipline our own guests because we don't want to disrespect Cape Canaveral. And that's just our street. Like, but we're not on the best street. And I don't know what's going on in these other streets and stuff like that, but how it's not fair for us to get kind of like isolated. We're trying to do good for Cape Canaveral and enhance the tourism and let the rest of America explore our community of how beautiful Cape Canaveral is and explore the rocket launches and our beaches and stuff. So tax revenue can come in, good publicity, and we can, as more people do good in Cape Canaveral and enhance other people's lives in the community, like that love will spread, and it's just going to be better for all. And we'll eventually squash out these bad eggs all over the place. And it's a tough endeavor. I mean, it's definitely tough, but we have to work together on this. And it's like, we have to separate people like us that are doing good and bad. And it sounds to me like there's some really bad stuff going on in other areas of Cape Canaveral, but I've been seeing, like, since we've been there since, I don't know, like 2013 or 2014, there's a lot more investors moving in, renovating homes that are like they used to be drug units. And I saw that stuff personally, and they're squashing these people out when these investors come in and renovate these places, and they're making some beautiful homes in there. And vacation renters are coming down, and there's good eggs and there's bad eggs, and we have to discipline these people. There's rich people and they're bad eggs. They get a little obnoxious at times, but we'll have our neighbors like contact us and we'll text them because we have everybody's phone number, and we're like tone it down. And I think it'd be a good idea for us to put in our manual, like the ordinances of Cape Canaveral in our manual. So guests that come there they need to respect it, and we need to and we put it in our website too, but we need to push that like stuff on them too. Like, you got to respect the community. You guys are guests here. You don't come here and run wild and throw your stuff all over the place. I mean, people are going to be people regardless, and there's always bad eggs, but ultimately, I mean, we live in the great state of Florida, and people love this state, and we have to like find a way to like work around this and enhance people's lives and also protect our community. So that's all I'm just saying. I mean, we can't just be like squashing the issue right away.
Mr. Schwartz, we're going to have you wrap it up real soon. You went over the limit, but we're listening to you. But we got a couple more people in line want to speak out there on virtual. Thank you, sir. Daniel?
All right, next is, and I do apologize if I mispronounced this, Michelle Wiedenhoff. You have 3 minutes. Michelle, if you're there, you can unmute yourself and start speaking at any time.
Hi, my name is Michelle. Can you hear me? I have a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house. I've owned it for 3 years. I rent it through an online rental company. I have a license through Cape Canaveral, and I supply Cape Canaveral with about $7,500 of tax revenue on a yearly basis. I have rules for my home. They're not allowed to be noisy after 10 o'clock. They're not allowed to have parties. They're not allowed to park on the street. I also have information in my home telling them about the rules and regulations of the area. I have not put anything about the sea turtles and the beach rules, but I will add that. I think that the problem properties should be held accountable. I think that the people who are disobeying the ordinances should be fined. The owners should be fined. I have no problem with any of the things in this except for the maximum occupancy. I have a 3-bedroom. I also have a futon and a sofa sleeper, which are largely occupied by children, not adults. The only concern I have is with the sexual predators. How am I to know when booking these guests through an online company if they have any kind of sexual predator history? And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Daniel?
All right, up next is Vernon Crane. Vernon, you're on. You can unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Hello, this is Vernon. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, sir.
So first, I would like to pose a question that I didn't really get from hearing everyone tonight, a clear answer. These new ordinances, are they shall enforce or may enforce? I didn't get a real clear picture of which one of those they are. Second, my property is in 8779 Cocoa Court. And I, like Michelle, one of my questions is, how do I know if I have a sexual predator? I have a property management company that manages my property for me and brings in my customers. And they vet my customers very, very well. But really, how do we know? And then the other thing that I wanted to say is listening to the back and forth tonight, which was great. I thought that maybe one of the things that might be something that you could think about, something that I would be willing to do myself, is have a permit process through the city that we pay for or is just given to us. And when we get the permit, we get your docket of information the way you want it provided to our tenants. That gives all the safety, all the information for the sea turtles, the noise ordinances, exactly the way you want it presented, not our interpretation of your website. And then if there's any violations that our property has, if we are the problem child, I'm not, but if we are the problem child, then after a 2 or 3 strike process and you're out, we lose our permit and we can't rent. And then if we rent again and the police would come back out and they look to see for our permit and we don't have our permit because it's been revoked, then we are in serious trouble. And that would, I think, weed out the problem actors very quickly and leave all the good actors in play relatively unscathed. But that's just an idea. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Question just real quick before we get to the next. Do we have the sexual predator background checking by these people in their contract to us?
Is that a part of the host compliance checklist? No.
It's not part of host compliance. That responsibility, draft ordinance is put on.
But the property owner, as per se, like the last gentleman, he has a host company that does his. You're right. The property management company, I would think, would be the ones that be looking into that. Even if the owner himself, but I don't know if we have that in our thing, or would it be something that we could include in that? Because it seemed to be a concern. Then it should be a concern.
Currently under Brevard County Sexual Predator Ordinance, it's unlawful for a property owner with knowledge to let or rent a premises to a sexual offender or predator in violation of their ordinance. As I indicated before, this provision in the city code reemphasized that obligation that already exists and has existed since 2006.
That answers the question of the sexual predator is then answered by a county ordinance that we have.
I mean, there are registration requirements on the sexual predator or offender. I mean, I think that when they lease property, they have to go and actually announce to the local sheriff, I believe, right? Yeah. I also believe there are sexual predator offender lists that are accessible, that property owners could afford themselves with the use of. I believe those exist. Basically. There's an obligation on the property owners today in Brevard County to police that issue or attempt to police that issue best they can.
There's people out there that do that, sir. There's people, firms that can do it for you, but to answer the question on the predators, there are some cases where they don't even register and they're found, but to answer the question that's being asked, I think the owner seems to fall back on the property owner and have his host company, whoever does their management, check it, background check those people. Right.
Mayor, if she's going to speak, she'll have to come to the microphone. The people who are listening can't hear what she's saying.
Yep, and Mr. Mayor, one point, I think if somebody does speak to the microphone, it was muted. When we went on break, I got a text. So just a reminder, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, there was a time when it was muted.
Okay.
Thank you.
We do make a mistake down there, but it's not intentional. Anytime you want to speak, I will going to ask you, but I didn't know you were going to be into the lengthy discussion, but the sexual predator, I would think, as a property owner myself, if I was going to do that, the first place I'd go is down to the sheriff's office. But they do, I'm sure, have a full list of those people that are in the city and all over the county. But like I say, there are people that, those guys are people, females or whoever they are, they move into areas and don't register. And eventually they're picked up on different things that they get them. But to answer the question out there, as far as I'm concerned, I guess looks like it falls back on the property owner and their management company to do that. Okay, Daniel, go ahead.
All right. Next up is Ryan Moreau. Ryan, you can unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'm Ryan Moreau. I live at 518 Jefferson Ave, full-time resident here, owner occupant. And I think some of the earlier speakers, I think the ordinances that are already in place will police a lot of these things. I do have a number of Airbnb type properties around me, and we haven't had any problems with any of them. They've been quiet and respectful. I have no idea how many people are in there, but I think our noise and parking ordinances will take care of those other issues. I think we do, I've seen just, we travel and walking around the neighborhoods, and a lot of the problem properties are people that are either renters or full-time residents that are here full-time. I think those are more of the ones that you tend to have problems with. My other comment is regarding the 7-day minimum. For having a cruise industry here and being one of the closest beaches to Disney and Universal, I know from people that I know in the area that do own these properties that there is a need for people that want to come with their families and stay for 2 or 3 days or 5 days, but not a full week. I just think it limits that. And also contractors. I do work in real estate, and I know a lot of people that work on the base that are here for a few days at a time. They might want to bring their families, may not be here for a full week. And people coming from Orlando that want to come to the beach, Memorial Day, the holiday weekends. But I think that's my biggest concern. I think the flexibility, I think most of the problems do come from the certain property owners, and I think they should be penalized. And that's all I had to say.
Thank you, sir. Daniel?
Next up is Joe Sojourner. Joe, you can unmute yourself and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Mayor, council members, and Mayor Pro Tem. This is Joe Sojourner. I live on Canaveral Beach Boulevard. Can you hear me okay?
Yes. Mhm.
Thank you. Just a few things. My husband and I have been coming to Cape Canaveral for more than 30 years visiting. We moved here 5 years ago, and the last 5 years, the short-term rentals have exploded. We're tax-paying citizens. We didn't move here to live next to a hotel. If I wanted to live next to a hotel, I could have purchased over by Radisson or Country Inn. And I thought I knew what I was moving into, not a commercial area. I didn't move here for a revolving door. Councilman Morrison, you spoke about occupancy. Last week on Ridgewood, there's a rental that currently states that they will hold 16 people. Last weekend, there were 25 people at that house. I would think that the city would want a number of occupancy on these residencies for fire, that there's exit signs, and that, you don't have 25 people staying in a place that would ultimately hold, say, 12 or 14. As far as rules, no one's mentioned dogs on the beach. At the beach that I go to, when these short-term rental people are here, is when I see the dogs on the beach. It's not our local residents. I know who's at my beach. I see them all the time. But when we come to weekends, that's when you see all the dogs on the beach. And then you had mentioned not wanting a 3-year log. I'm surprised that the city would not want to see what taxes are owed and what they're missing out on. So I think that you would want to log so you're able to make sure that these owners are paying you the taxes that we, the residents, wouldn't have to pay. And then as far as the calls that are monthly, several of us don't call because the rules currently are not being enforced. I have neighbors who have complained and have for a while, and nothing's been done to the property owners. So why should we call? And then your last caller talked about people here for less than 7 days for cruises. That's what our hotels are for. And that's all I had to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Daniel?
We have two individuals that have already spoken and have raised their hands again. Is it council's wish to hear them again?
It's up to you guys.
I'm okay.
Well, it'd be hard to ask. Daniel, can you inquire as to new information, or are we just going to repeat what somebody else said? I don't know.
Say it again, sir.
Are these people wanting to say something different, or do they just want to respond on what somebody else has already said?
I do not know what their intent is, sir. I only see a raised hand.
Maybe just give me 1 minute.
All right, well, just give them a minute to come back and respond to something.
All right. First up again is Nate Schwartz.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, somebody talked about, okay, party goers are okay, and they can't find a place to live in Cape Canaveral because of all these vacation rentals and stuff like that. Maybe they're not working hard enough when we're trying to be productive on society and stuff. And it's just confusing to me when we're trying to enhance the city. And then you have people like, okay, vacation rentals, we can't rent here anymore because vacation rentals are taking up the space. you can't afford to rent there anyhow of a property that size because you're not making any money. And then like you're okay with partying. So it sounds to me like you're a drug user or something, which is what I'm seeing all over Cape Canaveral. And again, it goes back to, are we going to enhance this city or are we not? We obey the rules. I mean, we obey the rules and we respect the rules. I mean, this is silly. And it's just like these people, I mean, we're in a serious epidemic of drug use in here. And I see it all over that place. It is so bad up there. And we're trying to enhance the city and improve it. And occupancy and all that stuff, like we adhere to the rules. I will discipline my guests. Absolutely. It doesn't get out of control or nothing. But if somebody does, because once in a while, people with money do tend to get out of control. But again, I have all the phone numbers of all my neighbors. And if we're offending somebody, they call me up because we're friends and we help each other out. We clean each other's driveways. We do yard work for each other because we're about community and enhanced.
You've been 2 minutes and we're going to turn you off. We need to get to the other speaker. Thank you. We allowed you more than a minute. I was looking at the countdown clock backwards. I think it was going up. It was going down. Wait a minute. Okay, next speaker. I didn't know she put it on there. I just had to look at it. I was watching my phone.
All right, Michelle, you're on. You're live.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. I just wanted to express my concern one more time that if I'm using a web platform such as Airbnb to book my vacation rental, I do not think that they are going to ask somebody if they're a sexual predator, and I don't think there's any kind of screening in place for that. And I'm just very concerned that that responsibility is going to fall back on me. Thank you.
According to our city ordinance, it would if you would just rent about a year, a month or day, or a month, whatever. It's your responsibility according to the ordinance. The attorney so indicated. And it is available through the sheriff's office locally. Daniel, anybody else?
Ryan Moreau wishes to speak again. Yeah. Ryan, you're live.
1 minute, sir.
Yeah, okay, it's clean.
Daniel?
Are you there, Ryan?
Real close public speaking. Nobody there. If he's not there, Daniel.
And that is the last of the raised hands. No more raised hands at this time.
All right. Public speaking is closed. Council?
Yeah, I have a comment to make.
Go ahead.
I just want to make it clear to everyone who's listening that this whole issue was resident driven. It was not council driven. The residents asked us to address this issue. And that's where all of this discussion has stemmed from, the residents. Thank you very much. It's resident driven, yes.
It's not a rampant thing throughout the city, but they do have problems and there are people that complain and we have to address those issues. And we do have an ordinance already in place, but we are addressing some of the issues that we have already, but we're going to address them a little harder. Let's put it that way.
Seeking a resolution, a permanent resolution for the people complaining about this, that it's become quite an issue in the city and all over the state, actually. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else have any comments before we call it a night? Yes, ma'am. Tell them.
Yes, I just wanted to, looking over this and reading the maximum overnight occupancy. On page 10 of 16, the number 2, it says notwithstanding the maximum occupancy restriction set forth in the subsection 1, the occupancy of vacation rental shall not exceed the maximum occupancy permitted by Florida Building Fire Prevention. Doesn't that cover all of this above? I mean, if we took out the square footage and just left that, wouldn't that cover what we're talking about.
Mr. Dickey, is this, paragraph 2 conclusive of what's mentioned above in paragraph 1? To answer Mrs. Kellum's question.
I guess the answer is I don't know. The question is, does the Florida Building Code coincide with the requirements of D1, 1, 2, 3, 4? That's the question.
Yeah.
Same.
Yes.
They're not the same. We had a brief conversation with the building official. I mean, there are occupancy provisions in the building code and fire code. I'm not sure whether they touch upon overnight occupancy. It's occupancy of a building, like the occupancy that's placard on the back of this wall that says 80, I think it's 80 is the maximum occupancy for this particular room. So it's, I don't think it's apples to apples, but there are just general occupancies of space too that apply under the Florida Building Code and Fire Prevention Code, like that you have to take into consideration. And then with respect to occupancy, I just did a little search on Municode just so you have the information. Cocoa Beach regulates vacation rentals. They permit 2 per bed, not to exceed 8. Indian Harbor currently allows 2 per bed plus 2 with a max of 12. Just as an FYI. Quick search.
And as far as the 3 things that we were discussing, the inspection, I think that's important, and it's on an as needed basis. Is that correct?
As needed or requested.
And the structure is like people renting out their shed. They could do that, I think. And I think, you know, that for the people that are here, we got a lot of complaints from residents, and like Miss Shea King, you know, she's lucky to have someone nice next to her. You guys are responsible renters. There's a lot of people that are not, and it's affecting the people's ability to live in their neighborhood peacefully. We had, and how we got to here and the host compliance was there wasn't enough evidence to take to code enforcement on our own to make something stick to the people that are doing bad things. So we thought hiring this company to monitor this, and it will be paid for by the registration fee, will give the code enforcement the teeth that they need to have to get rid of these bad renters.
Sir, you need to, if you're going to speak, would you come up to the mic, please? We can't hear you, and especially the people out in Cyberland can't hear you.
I
just feel like it's the same situation.
Point of order, Mayor. Just point of order. I mean, I respect the public's right to speak, but a councilwoman had the floor and was actually speaking. So
I thought he was answering something she was saying.
yeah, no, but
Yeah, well,
I would.
sorry, I thought he was
Yeah, that's
addressing her on that issue.
and I just
I don't think she was done.
So I thought it was between them two, it looked like.
we have to do something as a city. And you know, there's a lot of things, as Mr. Councilman Morris, some of it is overreaching. I just think that we have to do something, and it's not, and the people that live here, and like one caller said, they moved here for peace and quiet, not to live next to a hotel. And I agree. Like I said, we do have responsible owners. You guys are one, but there's a lot of people out there that aren't. We had a big issue with a property on Ridgewood where these people are renting every 3 days, and the parking lot's full of people. And as far as not having an event, there's a lot of places that rent a huge house, and it's like show up for this wedding reception and then it's over. I mean, we have to do something. And if we can tweak this to make it better that everyone will agree, then that's what we need to do. But you know, we have to answer to the residents that live next to the horrible renters. So, and it's not like, and like Mayor Pro Tem said, this is citizen driven. They brought it to us. So that's where we are, and that's what I feel.
Mr. Mayor, just one comment. I know we're trying to wrap up, but it is citizen driven, and I think that's our job, and we are trying to do it the right way. I do want to fix the problems. I hope that we can slim this up a little bit and get laser focused on this. I would also like to see, if the council's will, and it wasn't fair to Dave tonight to just ask him in number. I mean, put him on the spot, but thank you for taking a shot at it. But if we had a number of total violations to really understand what we're combating, because we say things like, it's a lot. This happens a lot. Well, then I want to be able to say, we looked it up. We ran a report. Here's where the tag code violations or the complaints, a list of complaints related to this, going back however much time makes sense. I don't know if that's something that can be done quickly, but having access to that report would be very, I think, helpful to quantify a lot in the residents. But don't forget, we heard tonight from residents as well who had concerns with it too. And we can't ignore those residents either. So that's it. Those are just my final comments. I will come back to the next meeting with some specific changes. And I just, for tonight, I really wanted to listen to council and appreciated. I think we all are trying to work together to do this. And I really wanted to hear from the residents too. So that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay, only thing I have to say is rules are not for the people that obey them. They're for the people that want to violate them. And that's why we need to have these rules in place. And Councilman Morrison is asking for facts, but we had one of our citizens come out and say that she doesn't even report all the situations that she had. So to come out and say we've got articulable facts that we can use, that is not the case, because I can tell you there are a lot of people that complain and have some issues that we're not hearing from or do not report them. So I just want to say that I agree with Councilman Morrison. Maybe there's some things that we can delete from right here, but we do need some kind of criteria that we can go by and make this something to go by when we need these enforcement tools. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, just one follow-up comment. I agree. If we find out that there's 100 complaints, we could probably double it or triple it to know that that's the real number. So the number of complaints is not going to be exactly how much it is on there. So it'd just be a benchmark. But I certainly know that if 10 are complaining, there's probably 20 or 30 that are unhappy for sure.
I know back 12, 15 years ago, whatever it was, when we brought this ordinance back up on, but at that period of time, Paul.
Remember that, yep.
We had a lot of people that actually stood and talked and said they didn't want to complain before because of fear of retaliation. That was the majority of the people that spoke at those meetings when we beat this thing to death for 3 years probably. And that was the biggest complaint, or not complaint, but that was the biggest comment from people. There were a fear of retaliation from not only the people that were there, but the people that owned the place, their neighbors, as they put it. So there are a lot of people that are unhappy with these, and it's something that we can't say, well, you can't have them because the state says you're going to have them whether you like them or not, and they're going to control it. But we do have a little teeth with our old ordinance that we had in place, thank God, back in 2011, when I'm talking about what we done when we did this, that we do have some teeth. And that's the 3 or 4 enforcements that we can do, the parking and the noise and those things that we already had in place. Other than that, we probably would be shot out of the water. But I can remember there was a lot of people. That was I don't want to complain. I'll let you guys and let the police handle it because I don't want any retaliation. So that was, I'm sure there's a lot of complainers out there. I have had no complaints about my neighbor next door. The complaints that I've had was up on the east end of my street and around the city and other places. So, like I say, I got the one next door. I don't even know the people are there. Once in a while, you might hear somebody come in and shut a door, but other than that, I know there's a lot of people that don't want to complain because I heard it. But that's all I have in my comments, and I think we do need to really address the occupancy. I think the occupancy is, I would, you know, I can see somebody having a little party in their backyard, a barbecue and 10 people, and then boom, go home and you got 4 people staying all night, but not 14 and 16 and whatever all that allows. I think that's a little stretching it a little too far. That's about all I got to say on it.
Mayor, if I could add, perhaps as we're trying to wrap up the evening, let's consider the schedule that's in the back of the agenda cover here. The next meeting this is scheduled to occur at is the Planning and Zoning Board meeting of January 27th. And that's a week or so, about a week. And then back to council on February 16th for second reading. It would possibly behoove the council to give some specific directions to the Planning and Zoning Board for their hearing, what issues you'd like them to vet. So their recommendation will come back to you on those items specifically.
Are you saying you want us to personally contact the P&Z board?
No, I mean, put on the record tonight which items you'd like the Planning and Zoning Board to.
I don't care to do that, but those people think for themselves, but they're out there listening, I'm sure. But I don't, you know, I know what you're saying now. I misunderstood what you said, I guess. But we can take that and form it up, and we had three or four major things that we talked about.
Yeah.
Parking, noise, and trash, and
I had one other question too. On page 12 of 16, the duties of vacation rental
where you at?
owner. 12 of 16.
12 of 16.
Over on the next, oh, I'm sorry, 13 of 16. Number 5, number 3, a vacation rental owner. Could we add, do we have, over here we say the agent can handle it. And then over here it says the rental must be willing to be able to physically present at the vacation rental for inspections. If they've hired a property management, can we add a rental owner or agent?
Yeah, that was probably an oversight.
And then the other thing, I think that maybe the planning and zoning could put their input on the maximum occupancy and the other issues, the inspection and other structures, if that's the consensus of the council.
The inspection, how are we able to do that? I thought the state said we could not inspect. Are we, when they?
No, they can inspect for building code, fire code, property maintenance code. Cities can do that.
I know before we
may not be able to do too much after the legislative session, but we'll see.
Before we used to do fire inspection on them every year, exit lights, fire extinguisher, exit, egress, ingress, but they took all that away from us. What are we talking inspection for?
So for Florida building code compliance, fire prevention code compliance, IPMC compliance.
Okay.
That's the way it's
They haven't slapped our hands on that. Because I know we were pretty stout on it before, but okay. Anything else? I think.
Just a quick question. When does session end in Tallahassee? Is it in a few months?
I think they're going back to March, right? They start.
Okay. I don't want to be preempted, but I'd hate for us to get down the road. Is it smart for us to, I don't know if you've thought about this, keep down and in on this, but it'd be a nightmare. We've worked really hard to get this right, and then poof, it's gone.
You never know.
Yeah, so I'm just
You can
saying
get it right, and then 2 years later, they get this gone.
March. Yeah, I mean, that's true. At any time, it could change. But, yep. Okay.
All right,
I guess the risk is always there.
We through with this for tonight?
We'd like to get a motion of some sort, and perhaps an appropriate motion would be approval at first reading with the Planning and Zoning Board directed to look specifically into the maximum overnight occupancy issue, the inspections issue, the duty for owner to be available issue as it relates to the 3-year registry. And I believe those are the only issues that the council had, because the other ordinances already exist. Noise, parking already exists. So if that's the motion of the council, we'll make sure that gets to the Planning and Zoning Board to hit specifically on those items and anything else they come up with.
That they didn't hear that they wanted, other than what the manager discussed.
Councilmember Kellum mentioned something about the accessory structure issue. I wrote that down. Is that something that the council wants to be vetted?
We did have a, I think Councilman Morrison brought up the structure issue. I don't know if we want to take that back to the planning and zoning. Councilman Morrison?
I can recap the accessory structure item. The reason it's in here is you can certainly use the garage out back for guests to sleep in, but you can't rent it separately from the main house. They still have to have access to bathrooms, to a kitchen. You can't have one group of people in the main house and a separate rented group out in the garage. It's all got to be one rental, but the garage can be used for sleeping purposes.
And my concern is who's going to live in a place without a restroom? I mean, it's not, we're taking on that responsibility to make sure they have a place to use the restroom. I don't think, and that was it. I don't think it's a big problem. And less words is better on this. And if it becomes a problem, we can add it in. So I'd move that we strike through that. That's where I was going. But if we just want P&Z they might have some good insight on that as well, just to look at it and just kind of, my only addition to this would just kind of encompass this is that P&Z, this is complex. This is not easy. Every city's dealing with this in the state. This to give it, prioritize the ones that we've listed. But if there's anything else upon another reading that, I mean, these some of the stuff you got to sleep on, that they see that they have the autonomy to weigh in as well. Any afterthoughts or anything like that. But that'd be my only request, is a preliminary second review of all of it, but prioritizing the issues we've listed. I just know how these go. The more you think through them, you end up seeing things differently, talking to people, looking at other cities. That's it. But accessory unit, I personally don't think it's necessary, but if P&Z might have a different opinion of this council.
Let them take a look at it.
Yep, that would be good.
You know, but accessory structures, I mean, we're maybe talking about a yard shed.
And we're also talking, I've dealt with issues of tents, people renting out tents in their backyard through the Airbnb, renting out
how much are
cameras
those?
that are, pardon?
Said, how much are those a night?
I know, you got a deal. That's a deal right there. We've had to deal with code enforcement with folks renting out RVs that they're running, and campers and trailers, all kinds of stuff. It's not a common issue. It's not a constant issue, but it happens enough where maybe we want to have something to address it. But we'll certainly bring this to the Planning and Zoning Board and get them to weigh in on it and get back.
So we got like 5 items, right, Mr. Manager?
Sure. I've got maximum overnight occupancy, inspections, duty for owner to be available as it relates to the 3-year period of record keeping, and accessory structures renting separately.
Okay. Well, our agenda goes out to the P&Z board tomorrow, so perfect timing. I'll be able to add this I'll add a paragraph to the end of the.
We need a motion to.
So it's good.
To that effect, to take it to the P&Z board. In fact, they have a motion.
Pass on first reading, and then it goes to the planning and zoning board to focus on
obviously make a recommendation regarding the entire ordinance, but to focus on those items that Todd, the city manager, listed.
Two separate motions, Anthony, or?
No,
just-
one motion.
One motion
is
to,
fine.
okay, we need a motion to accept the, Airbud rental, vacation rental ordinance and, a special attention from the P and Z board, focus on those items.
As enumerated.
As mentioned by the city manager, and we can have one motion to take care of both items.
I'll make a motion that we accept ordinance number 10, 2021 with all of the added extras to go to the P and Z board.
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion to, let me get back to the ordinance number, so I don't move that. I just turned it over. We have a motion to accept ordinance number 10, 2021 as presented with focus put on 5 items as mentioned to the P and Z board. Have a motion and a second, and we call the roll, please.
Councilmember Brown, Mayor Hogue,
4.
Councilmember Kellum, 4. Councilmember Morrison,
4.
Mayor Pro Tem Raymond.
4.
Okay, we had a long meeting, and anybody have anything they really need to report?
I have one item, Mayor. I've spoke with the council members individually one-on-one about the upcoming strategic planning retreat that we're planning for March 31st. And one of the biggest items that will be the resiliency item, the resiliency plan. And suggested that we have a workshop meeting specifically on the resilience plan on February 2nd at 6 p.m. just to hear that one item, do some Q&A. So when we get to the strategic plan retreat, it's not a brand new item that takes half the day. So it's a workshop meeting request for February 2nd, which is 2 weeks from today at 6 p.m. If I could get consensus from council on that, we'll schedule that.
I'll go along with it. Council? This is a workshop for resiliency?
February 2nd. Yeah, I mean, I'll check the calendar. Hopefully it's good. That sounds great.
You are?
Are we going to get the resiliency report before then?
Yeah, you'll have it as part of the agenda a week ahead of time.
Thank you.
Okay, council, we good for that?
Yep.
Good to go. I don't think we need a motion for that. Anybody, you moving to adjourn?
I just got one quick comment because I think manager. Thank you, Todd, for and Jim, whoever's part of the street light update. I think we got that just before the meeting. That is so nice, being able to see a complete exhausted inventory and the status. And look good when it says all working. I know we're working towards that, but that back order is outside of our control. And thank you for the silent service. A citizen had brought that up on Facebook. And then when you and I talked, you guys were already all over it. So I appreciate you getting out in front of that and getting those lights working. Looking forward to the CO's planning coming up. That's one of the favorite times of the year. Thanks to staff and everyone working hard to promote it. And yeah, the workshop sounds good. I think we went through 13 items tonight in about 13 minutes, and then we went 2.5 hours on item 14. So it was good.
Forget that last item.
That's all I have. Thank you.
All right. You need something real quick? You have something to?
No, I just would like to thank Mr. Dickey, Anthony, and for all that work on the zoning and land use. That was a long time coming and a lot of work.
And a lot of work put into that.
And Brenda, we didn't get to thank her before she left.
Although, easy, everybody worked hard on that one. That's a good one. Okay, we're gonna adjourn. Meeting adjourned. Good night, Mike. Hope everything's okay.